We are in movie mode. We've been severely lacking as of late. Do you go, like, if we're not recording on schedule, can you feel it in your bones? Like, man, it's been a long time since I've sat down with Ryan. It feels odd. It's a weird sensation to miss an episode. I don't know. Do you feel that?
I feel it in my bones. I see it in the comments. I can feel the need for movie mode, Ryan. And I think worst of all is like that time passes and then you get 1 day, 2 day, 3 days, and it's like, man, it's trying to find another time to reschedule, and then we're a week behind, and so there's a lot of things that go into it. But Rebel Ridge, we made it, man. Was there something last week that we tried to do and we weren't able to do? Is there something that we're missing on the channel, Ryan, if you want to explain that?
Yeah, let's talk about the missing pod. So we sat down to talk about Rebel Ridge and Beetlejuice and a few other things. And I opened up the conversation reflecting on the State of Fandom pod that we did, which I guess was the last podcast we released. And so we kind of talked about how we felt about it, how we felt our fandom or listeners thought about it. And this was obviously when there was a coordinated attack going on with all of these other YouTube channels, like Geeks and Gamers and Nerd Erotic. And so we touched on that, and the podcast quickly became the State of Fandom Part 2. And you and I went in for about another hour and a half without ever touching on Rebel Ridge, without ever touching on Beetlejuice. It just became a whole thing. And I was editing the pod, and I want to hear your side of this, but I was editing the pod and was a little exhausted by myself. I'm not going to lie, but also just kind of exhausted about all of it. And I thought it would be best to just go back to talking movies. Maybe we don't need 2 consecutive episodes bitching and complaining about the state of things. It's not necessarily what our listeners signed up for. So I just kind of found it best to not release the episode. And it wasn't even worth like editing it down because it still would have been the same thing. So anyway, I just kind of texted you asking what you thought of that. So how did you feel about that? Was that weird?
Well, it's kind of hard to judge because, you're editing and I'm sitting and kind of reflecting on what we said. And I'm like, did we say anything that was a little too crazy? And honestly, reflecting on it, not hearing it, I was happy with the podcast. I was very content with what we talked about. But at the same time, it is such an exhausting topic, and it's such something I feel like you need a break from. So 2 consecutive pods kind of hitting on the same thing and then doubling down on it in the next one like we did. And I still think we were fair. I still think we heard both sides and had some interesting arguments. But at the end of the day, man, I agreed with your decision. I feel as if we need to get back into movie mode and allow ourselves to just kind of process this a bit more, because these issues, these ideas will come back up inevitably. I mean, today I had somebody on Twitter, someone who followed me and supported me, and I was very shocked when they came out and they started asking me who I'm voting for president. And I'm thinking, did you listen to the State of Fandom and you assume that I'm one side? And then they're telling me, no, just based off of some people that you follow on Twitter, I feel as if I can't support you if you are supporting this particular nominee for president. And I'm thinking, first of all, why are you going down this rabbit hole? What is it about me that made you look into this in the first place? And I'm thinking, why can't we just support creators and have friends with maybe a different point of view? But again, he's just basing this off of people that I follow. He had no clue. And they say, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. I disagree. I think he was making an ass out of himself. And then his wife jumped in and started saying a bunch of things. And I just, at that point, tag teaming because he couldn't handle it by himself. So I'm just like, and it's another content creator. I'm like, what's going on here? Why are we doing the same thing that we were just talking about in the last episode? But everything is so, no one is willing to see both sides. No one is willing to communicate. He could have just DM'd me that instead of tweeting at me. It's these, I mean, the same thing happened to you last week. That's kind of what sparked our, and I don't want to spark it again. I know that's kind of what I'm doing here, but it made me think of our State of Fandom Part 2 and all the things that we talked about, man. And it's all about perspective, but it's all about trying your best to see both sides of things and how people act. And so when I was reacting to what he said to me, I was thinking about what we talked about in the unreleased pod and trying to be as fair as I could. I did not attack. I did not say things I wanted to say. I just sat back and said, I think you need to reflect on this. And he just kept going. And so these things will always come about that we can talk about, whether it be fandom or the way that fandom acts or allowing politics to come into these ideas. We will have more chances in the future. And so right now, other than what I just said, obviously, Ryan and I kind of want to really just focus on movies and vent and talk about things that we enjoy, but also have conversations that everyone can be a part of. And sorry, Ryan, I didn't mean to go off there.
I'm glad you touched on it a little bit, because the next point I was going to make to further explain why I found it best not to release the episode is I didn't want our listeners to misinterpret that episode as like us preaching to them.
Yeah.
Because if our listeners need me to hear, need to hear me say this, or our viewers need to hear me say this, like, I don't assume that anybody who listens or watches this podcast contributes to the things that we're complaining about, like, right? Yeah. So it's like, so why does our audience need to hear us talk about it, right? Because because I've enjoyed every interaction that I've had with the listeners of this podcast, the people who comment, subscribe, and it's just like, I don't need to assume that our audience needs to hear us talk about that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Obviously, these are topics that we're passionate about. Obviously, it's relevant to all of us, you, me, the listeners, when we talk about fandom and these types of things. But yeah, just having a second consecutive week, and it wasn't even about either one of us going particularly hard in a direction. Like, that's not really what factored into it. It's just like, let's just talk. I really missed. I think we missed the opportunity to talk about Rebel Ridge in a timely fashion. Like, it's obviously the biggest movie on Netflix, so it's still good that we're talking about it, and we should talk about it because it's great. But and there's other stuff too that we missed out on. It's just kind of like, let's just sit down and have fun. I will tell our listeners, I don't give a shit who you're voting for. I don't care.
They care who we are, Ryan.
I have opinions on it, but I want our listeners to know that, like, I don't have a problem with who you are and what you do. So I expect the same courtesy. And when we have these interactions with people that, like, push up against, I honestly don't assume that they are current listeners of Movie Mode. I definitely have members or listeners of previous podcasts that I've done that push up against, things that I've said or done, or challenge some of the content that I've made as well. And that's fine. But I don't do that to them. I don't have any interest. I could go to their Twitter account and find something I disagree with in 2 seconds, but I do not. Yep. I am more than happy to let them do it because it just shows me more about their character. But if somebody needs to hear me say that, I don't care. I might have opinions on it, but it doesn't mean I'm going to feel a certain way about you listening to my podcast or other people that you follow, other podcasts that you listen to. We don't need to add to that. Yeah. Listen to this podcast if you enjoy it. We appreciate you. Listen, follow whoever else you want to follow because it's people you care about. The people that like started calling me MAGA and I got defensive and was like, I've literally never once said I was MAGA. And then somebody was like, yeah, we know you follow we know you're voting for RFK Jr. I have never publicly said that I'm voting for RFK Jr. So what that told me is that somebody looked at who I was following between the three candidates at the time. All they did was look up who I was following and then said, you're voting for RFK. And it's just like, I mean, I wanted to. Yeah. But I didn't say it. Yeah. So you assumed it because you just looked at my following list, but you didn't know. You happened to be right. But
that's the thing.
It's also moot now.
They're literally assuming these things about this instance in particular. And again, I don't think this is a listener because I love our listeners and I've never had an interaction like this. But based on who I'm following, they got mad at me because I am following Donald Trump on Twitter. Guess what? I'm also following Bernie Sanders and Andy Bashir. Which one is it? Sometimes I like being well informed on all the things that are happening on both sides. And I'm like, guys, just because you're following one specific person does not mean, and again, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't on either side with any candidate, but I like to be well informed. I also like some of the outlandish, memeable things from certain people that maybe I don't agree with. I follow YouTube creators that I completely disagree with and don't take any stock in their opinion on. But sometimes there's a funny meme or sometimes there's something that I'm kind of giggling at. So I'm like, all right, that's a follow. You just digging for dirt. And they said, I don't like someone who is a supporter of or who is a MAGA, whatever they were trying to claim I was. And I'm like, I don't like people who purposely try to dig dirt on someone that they were supposedly following and taking stock in their opinion on. And I've had good interactions with them. Like, why would I want you in my life? That is such toxic behavior to try and find something about someone that may not even be true to say that I don't want to associate myself with you. That's lunacy. That's a lunatic. A crazy person does that.
It's bitch. It's bitch.
Yes. It's insane.
Just like being a YouTube creator who tries to demonetize and take down other YouTube creators, it's bitch. Sorry.
I like how you use that.
It is. And you know what I'll do right now? To stand in solidarity with my co-host, I will follow Donald Trump on X now.
Thank you. Will you also go follow Bernie Sanders and Andy Bashir and any other Democrats just to make it known?
Bernie, I did follow. Yeah. Bernie, I voted for.
Yeah, buddy. Here we were talking about the Theo Vaughn interviews. Theo Vaughn interviewed Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump back to back. I watched both. I agreed with things on both.
Oh my goodness.
I disagreed with things on both. But you know what a normal, sane person does? Doesn't put all of their stock in every idea from one person on one side all the time. That's what a normal person does. I don't know what other people do, but that's what a normal person does. And so I think that is psychotic fucking behavior. It's insane. It's insane.
It's
and so stop it.
You want to know what else? You know what else people do?
What?
Listen to the Theo Vaughn podcast weekly.
Yeah. There you go.
As somebody who's already a fan of Theo Vaughn, and this past weekend, I'm gonna listen to the episode where Theo Vaughn got to sit down with a former presidential candidate, a former president, the current. It's like,
duh.
What's
wrong with people, man? What's wrong with people?
Yeah,
I just can't. I can't.
So, anyway, that's so funny. That's actually not exactly what we talked about. I mean, we kind of dabbled in that, but that was like a new conversation that we kind of had. Was. So, I'm gonna ask you more about it off air though, for sure.
Oh yeah.
You know, one thing I did touch on, and this will kind of bring us back to pop culture a little bit. So we touched on a longtime listener of mine. Shout out to Andy Mendoza. He's a listener of Movie Mode and a follower of me. I'm assuming he follows you. I guess I don't know, but Andy Mendoza is a good guy. I've been talking to him, and he's been a supporter of my content and just a supporter of some of the things that I've gone through over the last few months, coming back to creating content. So huge shout out to him. But he kind of asked me, and I'll paraphrase a little bit. He kind of asked if I'd ever be interested in talking more. What I assume he meant is like just more lifestyle stuff, like on a different pod, or I don't know that I'm really qualified to talk about like lifestyle, and I don't know if I want to come across in a way that's like you should be doing this. But I do have things that I'm doing in my personal life to expand my horizons, I guess.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I want to start reading again. Are you a big reader? Have you read recently anything interesting?
Not since the baby was born. The last big book I read was I finished Dune all the way through, which was awesome. I finished it after 1, just in time for 2. And so that was kind of the last big one. But yeah, I mean, I tend to read a little now, but with her, it's hard to start something, get really invested into something, and finish it all the way. We'll see what happens over the next couple of months, because there are probably 5 to 6 books that I've really wanting to be reading, and I've had on my list for forever. We'll see, but normally, under normal circumstances, I try to read 5 or 6 new books a year. It just hasn't happened in about 2 years.
Yeah. Well, I'm in the same boat roughly. I dabble in reading. My attention span, my not reading comprehension level, but just like my ability to read and sit down, it's definitely worse as I've gotten older, and I think it just has to do with attention span and all that kind of shit we always talk about. But I do want to get back into reading, and I'd be interested to know if our listener base are big readers, or if they'd be interested in maybe us talking about books more here. So I went to a local bookstore and picked up Dark Matter, which, sorry, the image is reversed, but this is the Apple TV Plus series that's going on currently. I don't know what the series relationship is to the book. Like, I don't know if this is season 1, or I don't know if season 1 is half the book. I don't know how that works. I haven't looked into that like at all. I literally just know it's a show on Apple TV Plus, and I've actually even forgotten the actors that are in it right now. But regardless, I picked this up, and if Andy Mendoza or anybody else out there is wondering, like, how can I expand my horizons? Ryan, what are you kind of doing to get through your week? What are you doing to get through all this shit going on in the world and fandom? This is something I want to start doing. And I started following more like book talk people. And I have unfollowed more movie people.
Ooh.
It's not about like watching less movies or anything like that. But removing myself more so from discourse around movies, and just spending more time on myself and expanding my own horizons, being more present in my life and less worried about what other people are talking about when I don't necessarily know if I care about that kind of stuff anyway. So trying to reduce some noise in my life and pick up a new habit. So anyway, Dark Matter is a book that I'm going to start. Again, following more book talk people. That way the content that I'm looking at just teaches me more about things I haven't really steeped myself in. Like one of the guys that I follow, I should pull up his account. He pulls up a lot of nonfiction. So he pulls up a lot of like Roman history and like Persian history and all this kind of stuff that I feel like I'd actually be interested in. So anyway, I've just started following people that are doing this. Anyway, so if anybody's curious, I'm trying to pull up who it is that I'm following. And you know how I am with this shit. I never have anything I want to.
Well, I will say, Ryan.
Michael Kist. Kist reads books. I follow him on Instagram and TikToks. And there's this other guy, Tony P. A Life on Books. He's a guy on Instagram I'm following. And then there's somebody else on TikTok that I'm following. I can't remember. But anyway, that's my recommendation of the week. What are you doing to keep yourself out of fandom? Anything? Watching presidential debates?
Yeah, man, that was great. Actually, no, we scheduled I have another podcast that we used to do when we took a 2-year break. It's called PopX Cast. We actually did our live stream last night during the debate, but we didn't plan for it to be during the debate. So I had to go back and kind of rewatch and catch up on the memes were great. I will say that the memes were fantastic from last night's debate. So many good memes, but yeah, you're getting me motivated though, because I've been on a little bit of a history kick lately. And I don't know why, but I haven't thought about diving into books on history like the Roman Empire and some of those things that I've been wanting to dive into for years and years, but you get so caught up in movies because I'm trying to review everything. So yeah, I'd like to take some time, maybe Mondays and Tuesdays when the baby's at daycare, to kind of catch up on some books. I think that'd be fun to talk about on this podcast too. But really, I've been the last 3 to 4 weeks, we try to find time every night, every other night. I set up my daughter's water table outside. You plug in the hose and the water sprays everywhere, and set her up a little mini slide, some things in the back, and we try to take about an hour every day, go outside, put our phones down, let the dogs run around, and let the baby play, and just not even get on the internet. And we've really made an effort to spend time with our daughter. But we've really made an effort to pay. It's such an obvious thing. We're trying our best to live in the moment, because I get so distracted by all this stuff. Our entire last episode, that is so distracting, all of this going on. And I feel like time is slipping away, and she is growing up so quick. And I know that's such a cliche thing to say, but dude, her hair is longer. She is taller. She can now reach cabinets that she could never reach before. And I'm sitting back going, have I just spent, and I haven't, but it almost feels like I've spent my whole last couple of months while she's been growing on the internet. And it's crazy. And I love it. Don't get me wrong. Like what we're doing here and some therapeutic things that, watching things that I love. But then there's the work side of it. And then there's the getting caught up in the nonsense and the state of fandom and the people arguing with me on Twitter side of things. And I'm like, man, I'm missing my daughter growing up. I really am. And so we're trying to make an effort every day, every other day, if it's not raining, to go outside, take our shoes off, put our feet in the grass, and watch her play. And it's fantastic, man. It's really been great, therapeutic, and I feel like we're kind of soaking it in a little bit more. So it's really nice.
Yeah, I got to get me one of those. I got to get me a daughter.
Yeah, man.
I got to get me a wife. Those are the things. So my wife and my daughter right now are Tony Hinchcliffe, William Montgomery, watching Kill Tony every week. That's what I'm doing. But yeah, that's beautiful. I wouldn't be so hard on yourself because your job does center around you having to be on the internet. But yeah, obviously opting out of the fandom and stuff like that, it's obviously going to be beneficial to you. So I don't think you should be that hard on yourself for being too much on the internet. But again, your point is, certainly reasonable. You don't want to miss out on, you see your daughter playing and you think to yourself, do I really need to see Venom: The Last Dance? Could I just take my family to Disney World instead?
Dude,
nobody would blame you for it.
I could see anything and think that. I could see somebody taking a shit in our front yard and saying, should I really see Venom? That's right. Probably. So, but I, honestly, man, the state of fandom, the first one we did, that kind of shot things into perspective for me. I'm like, man, why am I so focused on all this nonsense that we really were able to talk out in that episode. So that was nice. Hopefully other people have went outside and sat in their yard since that episode.
Yeah. I talked about it on the missing episode, but I also might as well mention it. Watch Kill Tony. I look forward to it. I look forward to it every single week. It's a release. And it's so easy to forget or just not be aware that content like this exists. And if you don't know what it is, comedian, he's an insult comedian, roast comedian, Tony Hinchcliffe hosts the show. He lets amateur comedians do a minute of comedy. He interviews them. He roasts them. There are regular comedians that come on every single week as well. So you'll have your regulars. There's a guest host on the panel every single week. So you get to see your favorite comedians appear on the show. Anyway, it's just so much fun. It's the reason why I refuse to be gaslit into thinking that I don't watch diverse content on the internet. Yeah. And it makes you appreciate that there's a side on the internet that doesn't take themselves too seriously and actually just like wants to have fun and not be miserable, hateful people all the time. So Kill Tony Monday nights on YouTube on the channel. That's my release.
Yeah.
So anyway, and then now I've got Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. So
the show's good, by the way.
I'll report back. Who's the lead? That's not the Colin Farrell joint, is it?
No, that's the Joel Edgerton.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. It's good, man.
Shout out to Joel Edgerton. Should have been a Furiosa. All right. Let's take a moment to talk about the late great James Earl Jones for a second. I'm not one to typically like eulogize celebrities, and we talked a little bit about this off air, but James Earl Jones, I don't have a deep connection with them as an actor. You know, honestly, I could name the amount of things I've seen him in on one hand. Obviously, they're his most iconic roles, but one of his most iconic roles happens to be one of the most important figures in my life. And no, it is not Darth Vader. Ooh. It's the neighbor in Sandlot. No, it is it is Mufasa. So why not take a second to talk about James Earl Jones? How did you feel about that gentleman?
Yeah, it was sad, man. I mean, it's getting old, obviously. So whenever they get around that age, you're just scared. They tweet something that includes their name, and you're like, okay, no, they're okay. Because that happens all the time. Somebody did with Samuel L. Jackson the other day. I was like, okay, no, he's fine. He's fine. They just used his name in a tweet with a weird, ominous picture. But I think I'm with you. You know, as much of a Darth Vader fan as I am, and his voice is so iconic, I would say probably more iconic than Mufasa with Darth Vader. But I think Mufasa affects me a little more because I grew up with that film. I love that movie. I've seen it 20 plus times, and it has that can appeal to children while also appealing to an 80-year-old type of thing. And so, yeah, that's the first thing I thought of was Mufasa, and obviously Sandlot, and all of his commercials, and his David Letterman appearance was one of my all-time favorite David Letterman appearances. That was great. So yeah, he will definitely, absolutely be missed. His voice, I mean, he was still doing things in 2024, which was crazy. Little commercials here and there. His voice will be missed, man. And it's hard to replicate too. I've seen people try to do it. It's just so deep, and it's almost perfect. And I will say, I watched a couple of clips from the Fences play, that movie that Denzel did. Holy crap, dude. I knew he could act. That was awesome. His performance in those clips, I'm like, dude, he should have been in the movie. Like, it was phenomenal. So shout out to an underrated part of his career, being an actor. He's really good at it.
Yeah, I think he's obviously an icon, but I think his acting, and admittedly so, I'm a little less knowledgeable of things that he's been in as himself, but or appearing in himself, and not just a voice, but he's irreplaceable.
Yeah,
like Lucasfilm's gonna be getting that AI out, upgrading it, getting it ready to do every single, Anyway, but yeah, shout out to him. Mufasa, you know, I remember my dad taking me to see Lion King for several weeks. I have an extremely complicated relationship with my father, currently non-existent, but my dad took me to see Lion King growing up several times, and I always, you know, and this speaks to a lot of my psychology, but you know, we won't go there, but associating like fatherhood and things to Mufasa, it's pretty incredible looking back on it. Of course, like the iconic moment in the canyon affects me to this day. Yes. You know, going to see it was the 20th anniversary, I guess, when they released it in 3D. I went with my mom and sister, still cried as an adult, you know, so all that kind of stuff you got going on. But it's pretty amazing looking back on it as an adult, because we're talking about a 90-minute movie where the dad dies within the first 30 minutes. And it's just like, isn't that incredible that there used to be characters used to be so well done in movies that they would affect you with only a few minutes of screen time. But instead we'll go, you know, 6 movies not giving a shit about, you know, Hobbs and Shaw or whatever the fuck. So there was a time. Stupid. It's a stupid comparison. I just wanted to make you laugh. That's all. But there was a time when 10 minutes of screen time was enough to be like all-time favorite movie, Dad. Yeah. But shout out to James Earl Jones for that. So anyway,
another character who had very limited screen time, but was a pretty impactful and culturally iconic character. Can you guess who that is?
Are you going Darth Vader, or are you segueing somewhere else?
It's Beetlejuice. Only 18 minutes. I learned this last night. 18 minutes of screen time. And you just mentioned Mufasa with less than 30 minutes of screen time. And you brought up a great point. I'm thinking of movies today with those types of characters, and I'm sure if we dug deeper, we could find him. But off the top of my head, I don't know, man. I think of Gollum when he first made his appearance prior to Return of the King. I think of, modern characters, man. It's very hard to think of. And, you know, inevitably, eventually 10 years down the road, we could think back and be like, oh, that was an iconic character. That was, you know, maybe Mad Max not having a lot of dialogue. It's that sort of impact that I just don't see a lot of nowadays. And so that's a fascinating point, man. 80s and 90s were filled with those types of characters. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's almost like the people who are overly critical of modern cinema, they might have a point. The people who have been around a while, who have seen movies, they might have a point. Anyway, you saw Beetlejuice. I famously said I don't need to see it, but I am curious to hear what you have to say about it. Look, I'll be honest.
Okay.
I'm very interested in Jenna Ortega. But even more so, and I mean this, I'm dead serious. I'm more invested in Justin Theroux.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to guess he's got like 10 minutes of screen time in this movie. Anyway, regardless, there was a movie that had Jenna Ortega, Justin Theroux, and Michael Keaton came back and reprised the role. How did you feel about Beetlejuice? Well,
I think the movie's a little messy. It starts out a little rough. First 10, 15 minutes or so. I love the opening. The opening is like iconic. It's got the music and you're like, oh shoot, we are back. Okay, we're revving up. Here we go. But they establish a lot in the first act of this movie, like 7 different storylines. And I immediately thought, this is convoluted. And it kind of felt that way for the first 15 minutes. The thing about this movie is the same effect as the first. Beetlejuice only has, I believe he has the exact same amount of screen time. I believe it's 18 minutes in this movie, because Michael Keaton said in an interview recently, I only want the same amount of screen time as I had in the first movie. That's fascinating. I have the same thoughts walking out of this as I did the first. Michael Keaton's the MVP. It feels like he had more than 18 minutes. Every time he's on screen, I was having a great time. It was so much fun. And when we were focused on Beetlejuice, it was a blast. Now, some of the storylines are great. You said Jenna Ortega, her storyline is awesome. There's a little bit of a romance in there, some things with that character that lead us into the final act that I thought were really great. And even the relationship with her mom, Winona Ryder, was nice. It was nice to see that dynamic, because you kind of know how Winona acted in the first movie. She was very by herself, and she strained relationship with her mom. They hit on that. They hit on her new relationship with her daughter now, and that was really nice. But they give Beetlejuice a love interest. And while it gives us a cool backstory for Beetlejuice, another love interest, by the way. While it gives us a cool backstory for Beetlejuice, everything else was so underdeveloped, and we don't know what her mission is exactly. We don't know why she's going and doing the things that she's doing, and her special effects from the things that she's doing to people are awesome. They utilize practical effects in this film. It was really cool. And what they do with the underworld, I actually think they handled the underworld in this film way better than the first. They expand on so many things, where your soul goes, what your soul is doing in the meantime, all the different factions of the underworld, and Willem Dafoe's character, while it's another character, it was really cool. He was like this underworld detective, and he was going after Beetlejuice, so that was awesome. But you got too many things going on at once. That was my issue. Now, it focuses up, it comes together, and all those little storylines literally meet up in the final act. And we get a dance singing number that was so much fun. I mean, it was nuts. It was crazy. Justin Theroux, by the way, wasted, I thought. Kind of wasted. Good, not bad, but a little wasted. But the ending had me kind of happy. I was smiling. I was having a good time with it. So, look, it's a messy movie, but I really enjoyed myself. I love how they fleshed out ideas from the first one. You've got to be on board for Tim Burton's style, which has annoyed me, admittedly, for the last, 15 years? He hasn't had a good movie in 15 years, probably. Maybe you can think of one. But
I think longer than that.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I mean, Big Fish is the last one I can. When was Scissorhands and Big Fish? Big Fish was 2002 or 3.
Mid-90s.
I mean,
Big Fish was early 2000s. But
is that the last one that I think that's the last one I've enjoyed. So this is his best movie in 20 years, maybe.
Yeah,
crazy, dude, crazy.
Yeah, I'm not a Burton head, so admittedly, I'm actually into watching it at home when it comes out on streaming.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's enough. The main reason why I'm curious is not because I care about Tim Burton or the character or anything like that, but because we've talked about how this is the year for legacy sequels.
Yeah,
like
you're right.
They've been our favorite movies of the year, and just to go through them again: Apes, Furiosa, Romulus, and then
Twisters.
What am I missing? Twisters. Yeah. So we've had a lot of fun with legacy sequels this year, and so I wanted Beetlejuice to still count. So do you would you lump it in together as just a success in terms of bringing a legacy sequel to the screen?
Yeah, especially when I start comparing it to what I knew prior to what Top Gun Maverick is, just horrible legacy sequels, one after another, and it's just like botched attempt, like they did Zoolander 2 and Dumb and Dumber and all these things that were terrible. But lately, man, and I'm not saying Beetlejuice 2 is on the level of I think some people may watch this and like it more than the first, to be honest with you, but I'm not saying it's as good as your Blade Runners and your late things that have been awesome. But man, I think it's a success. And you look at the box office, it was already going to be huge, But the good scores, the good reviews, the good word of mouth, all of that has impacted it greatly. And I think it's going to keep making its mark. And so, yeah, I would say this is a very successful movie. I would have never thought it was going to make that much at the box office. But kudos, man, to everybody. And kudos to Tim Burton for at least once bringing us back some of that magic that he used to have.
And what about Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F?
Yeah.
Was that a thing? Okay.
It was pretty enjoyable, man. I had some fun with that. I'm not saying it's great by any means, but positive scores, reviews, good views on Netflix. So, yeah, that's another one.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, Justin Theroux, people don't realize how great of an actor he is.
Oh, he's phenomenal.
The Leftovers is one of my favorite shows of all time. And guys, if you haven't seen The Leftovers, it's a weird sell. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I can see somebody not vibing with the first season and then leaving and not giving the rest of it a chance. Season 2 of The Leftovers is maybe one of my favorite TV seasons of all time. It's the weirdest show that I rewatch constantly. There's almost no rewatchability value whatsoever.
I was going to say,
it's such a specific vibe, but I can't help it. I love it so much. And Justin Theroux crushes in that show. He's an incredible actor, and I've been waiting to see him like take off. He was in that Girl on the Train movie with Emily Blunt. He does like random little weird things here and there, but he hasn't been given his due. One of the weirdest things he's done is written Iron Man 2. I think that's hilarious. I think he should play an MCU villain. I would love to see it. I would love to see him play a Spider-Man villain. I honestly would totally vibe if he was Doctor Doom. Or he would have been awesome as Reed Richards too. I think everybody would have been like, "Wait, what? Justin Theroux?" And like, I get it. Like, everybody probably just heard me say that and like, did you really think Justin Theroux should be Doctor Doom? It would have been cool as shit. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, I'll get around to seeing it for sure. All right, should we talk about one of the most unsuspecting successes of 2024?
Absolutely.
Rebel Ridge was a movie I was looking forward to because of Jeremy Saulnier. So Jeremy Saulnier, if you don't know who he is, he came onto the scene with a movie called Blue Ruin 11 years ago. I've only seen it once, but I thought it was pretty incredible.
That's great.
I watched it in preparation for Green Room in 2015. So Green Room is the reason why I'm a Saulnier head. So I saw that movie in theaters. I remember the coverage like on Slash Film. Nobody could get over the fact that Patrick Stewart was playing a neo-Nazi. There were like set photos. It was just like the coolest, weirdest. It was awesome. That was all I needed. And again, kind of going back to like the things that stand out to us about movies. That's all I needed at one point was just seeing a picture of Patrick Stewart as a neo-Nazi, and I'd just be like, yeah, man.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't happen as much anymore.
No.
But Green Room, the late great Anton Yelchin as well in that movie. The first time I ever heard the name Imogen Poots, she's in that film. Green Room is probably my go-to movie recommendation for the normies in my life. Cool. That are just like, hey, I'm looking for something to watch tonight, maybe something a little scary or maybe something thrilling or whatever. Green Room is probably one of my top 5, top 10 most, because I can count on that person not having heard it or seen it.
Yeah.
Heard of it or seeing it. But also I can count on them like loving it. So anyway, I recommended that movie as recently as 2 weeks ago to somebody that I knew nothing about their movie taste. So anyway, Saulnier is always on the back of my mind. The Netflix movie that he did to follow Green Room up, Hold the Dark. I watched it on Netflix. I don't remember really anything about it other than the barn shootout with it was like a Gatling gun.
Yeah.
Barn. That's the only scene I remember, but I just remember being disappointed in that movie. I'll stop here. So what's your track record with Saulnier up until this point?
Yeah, Green Room is great. I kind of learned that Anton Yelchin is or was that actor, I think. And I think he was on track to become that actor, man. You look at, first of all, how young he passed away. Like, that's just devastating. We talk about celebrity deaths, man. When it's that young and when it's just something tragic along those lines and how good he was in that film. And so whenever I think of Green Room, I think of him, but then obviously I also think of Patrick Stewart. I remember that first image, and I remember like Collider guys freaking out about this. And this was in the early stages of A24 too. This was before it had become what it is now. And so this is one of the movies that got me into A24. And I'm like, what is the studio? What are these movies all about? Because it is something that it's funny because it's accessible, but it's not one that you often hear people talking about. It's not even one you think about for a general audience, but I feel like I know a lot of people who would love this movie. And so I was super pumped to see his next project. Blue Ruin was great as well. Hold the Dark, I'm kind of with you on. I was a little disappointed. I still thought it was pretty good, but you're making those Green Room comparisons. It moved very slow. I remember it being one of the slowest movies of the year, and audiences not loving it because of that. But it had that similar, just phenomenal direction, good look, the way the camera moved. And that's what I was excited about for Rebel Ridge, man. I'm like, I want to see what he does with this very simple premise, something that reminds me of a Reacher, of maybe a Rambo, of that kind of thing. But I want to see a Saulnier take on it. And I want to see what it's going to look like. And so that got me built up and got me pretty hyped for this film. And honestly, man, just seeing him on Twitter, like going around and saying thank you to people for praising his film and retweeting people, just random people, and being so interactive with his fans, like you root for someone like that. And so I was rooting for this movie to do well just because of all. I had I think it was a medic, someone who was a medic on set for Rebel Ridge, comment on my review and say thank you so much for supporting our movie. I'm like,
that's cool.
They got the coolest people involved with this movie because they're just going around and thanking everyone. It's awesome to see that. So I was very excited for it.
Yeah, that's sick. Also, his contributions to True Detective. We can't forget that as well. Oh,
man, for sure.
The first 2 episodes of the season 3 Mahershala Ali's season, I remember there being drama, and he like left True Detective or like I can't remember exactly what happened, but he like left the season for like creative differences or something like that. And that was kind of disappointing because I just thought he was such a perfect fit for that. But I'm glad that it didn't mean that he wouldn't, find success somewhere else. And, this is his second Netflix movie. This one's crushing. It's definitely better than Hold the Dark. It's definitely more viewed than Hold the Dark, much more memorable than Hold the Dark. I might revisit that movie, by the way. I'm just kind of curious, even though I do think it's my least favorite of his. But just wanted to give Saulnier some flowers. But when Anton Yelchin passed, I did a crash course in a lot of the movies that I had missed of his over the years. So I watched Alpha Dog for the first time.
Oh, nice.
Have you seen the movie Like Crazy that he did?
No, I remember that, but I didn't see it.
Yeah, him and Felicity Jones did a movie Like Crazy. I thought it was really good as well. And then what was the other movie? Oh, Thoroughbreds.
I was going to say
Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yeah.
And then Cook.
Olivia Cook.
Hightower. Yeah, Olivia Cook.
Mhm.
Thank you. So anyway, all because of Saulnier, all because of Green Room. I've been crushing Anton Yelchin movie or crushing on Anton. I've been crushing on Anton Yelchin. No. Anyway. So anyway, shout out to him. I loved Rebel Ridge. Let's just open this up right here, right now. I loved it. Another great movie to just recommend. Like, again, the same person I recommended Green Room to. I was like, oh, he's got another movie on Netflix. Like, and it's sick. You should watch it.
Yeah.
So did you follow the production news surrounding this movie in real time, or are we all sort of remembering what was going on with John Boyega and all that?
I didn't follow it at the time, but I have kind of caught up with everything, and it's a lot more than I think I had heard wind of it when it was happening, but it's a lot more than I remember while it was happening.
Yeah. I think I read it, but because I didn't have any context of what the project actually was, I could go either way. I will comment for a second, though. John Boyega's fall is pretty tragic. I don't really know where he went wrong or where Hollywood went wrong. I don't really know. I know that dude has a lot of charisma. I know that he busted onto the scene with Attack the Block, and that was, I mean, he had the moment. He had the movie. He got cast in Star Wars. He is, in my opinion, the best character in The Force Awakens.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
He's my favorite character. He's the best character in The Force Awakens. What they did with him in Star Wars is an absolute tragedy.
Absolutely.
And he has never recovered. But he's also made weird ass decisions, like try to produce and revive Pacific Rim. There was a movie on Netflix, I think it was called Empire Dreams. I stopped watching it in 15 minutes. It wasn't his fault, but it was such a poorly made movie. I was like, I don't even need to watch this. Yeah. Don't really know what's going on with this dude. He's a pretty outspoken guy. You know, he there were a few things politically he stood on the front lines for, not really commenting on it. But I think that we're going to see more and more of these young actors sort of, I don't want to say ruining their careers, but we're going to see a lot of young actors cause their careers to implode on themselves.
Yeah.
And I think there's a possibility Rachel Zegler is headed there. I think we're going to see more of this. And I don't want to say that it's exact. Obviously what's going on with John Boyega isn't the same as Rachel Zegler, but I just think there's going to be reasons why we see more of this going on. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that at all? Have you even taken a second to examine that?
Yeah, not specifically Boyega's fall. I think last year was a little better for him. He did They Cloned Tyrone, which was a moderate hit, but I thought he was pretty good in it. And then actually, I think the biggest tragedy in his career, I believe his best performance lately has been in a movie called Breaking, where he played a war veteran who, and I don't know if you saw that trailer, but things kind of go haywire and there's a bank heist. And I saw that film at a festival. It released, but nobody ever knew it released and nobody really saw it, but he was great. I mean, great in that movie. So when I initially saw he was attached to Saulnier, I'm like, holy cow, dude, maybe John Boyega is back. Like, this is going to be crazy. Ultimately, that falls through, and, you know, he's just kind of on that decline, I guess. But I'm rooting for him, right? But I wasn't upset with the replacement. I am all on board anything this guy wants to do. Is it Aaron Pierre?
Yeah.
Pierre, I believe. I'm on board with anything he wants to do, and I immediately forgot. No offense to Boyega, immediately forgot that he was originally cast, because I know this is crazy. I got shades of like Denzel watching him, and I don't want to like speak too fast and say, "Oh, he's the next iconic actor." I don't want to say that, but I got those shades of just someone who can do a lot of things that I didn't really know a lot about, because he does a lot of things in these movie. In this movie, he's quiet when he needs to be quiet. He's terrifying when he needs to be, and he's a badass when it comes to the action. So, dude, when I saw the first scene with him, I'm like, love you, Boyega, but this is the right call for the role.
After seeing Aaron Pierre's performance, I don't think Boyega could have done this. And I'm a fan of Boyega, but he doesn't have. He's not as physically imposing. He's got the charisma, 100%. He's got the acting chops. By the way, I love The Woman King. I love that movie.
That was a good one. I forgot he was in that.
I like that movie a lot, actually. Proud. I got it on 4K, rewatched it several times. I think it's wonderful. But you know, he dabbles in some like, you know, fandom speak. You know, he's been vocal, and I'm not saying I have a problem with it necessarily, but it's causing people problems. So a combination of that, weird choices. I'm surprised that he hasn't taken off. This would have been a great movie to be a part of for him. But and it's weird what happened. You know, just, you know, he cited family matters, things like that, and that's why he left the project. But, you know, we just kind of heard about this with Joaquin Phoenix. You know, that's a weird thing to leave a movie. Boyega left mid-production. Forget about, at least Joaquin did it before a week before. But Boyega reportedly walked away from this movie mid-production.
That's crazy, man.
And so, you know, it's I don't know what went into that, but unfortunately, Boyega missed out on a great movie. But again, seeing Aaron Pierre do this, a guy I have no reference for whatsoever, this was the first time I've ever seen Aaron Pierre on screen. And, you know, I'm already ready to say, cast him as Jon Stewart, put him in the DCU, make him Blade, Mahershala Ali can go home. Like, I'm ready to do all these things just to see Aaron Pierre on screen. And I don't mean the voice of Mufasa or Scar, whoever he's doing in the Mufasa movie. But this dude's great. And again, physically imposing. He had the presence needed for this type of character.
Yes.
So what a fun surprise to see this gentleman play this fun role. So I'm going to assume that most people, this isn't like a movie that needs to be spoiled on the podcast, but I'm going to assume most people have had the time to see it. So we're not going to blatantly spoil it, but I do just want to talk about a few scenes that stood out. Him going toe to toe with Don Johnson outside, which that's 10 scenes I just described, but specifically the one where they walk out the front door.
Yep.
And they're standing face to face. They've got the other officers in the distance. They've got the girlie inside. Emery Cohen, another Emery Cohen movie, by the way. A better Emery Cohen movie than Backriders.
Yes.
But so that type of scene where they just find out like he knows jujitsu, and it's like, fuck yeah. Like there's just like moments like that are just so silly, but they had my fist pumping, and I'm like, what's going on right now? Am I watching a Netflix movie and I'm on the edge of my seat, like I'm in the theater, like getting pumped over? You know, it's so ridiculous. This dude just taking on this police department in a small town, so sick, man.
Yeah.
It's so fun, so sick. And I watched it because at the time I thought we were going to record the podcast, and so it was like 10 a.m. on that Friday or whatever. I was just having the time of my life watching this at home.
I think the way this starts out, it's one of the best first acts of the year. I know that's crazy. I have my issues with this movie. I think you liked this one a lot more than I did. Maybe not a lot more. I think you liked it more. I think it's one of the best first acts of the year. It gets you so invested in his story, his motivation for being there. I love a story that there is a guy on a mission and you got a bunch of jackasses getting in his way. And that's what this was. I am on a mission. You are in my way. Not only are you in my way, you are messing everything up. And so that's what this was. But you don't know at the beginning of the movie that he has a Liam Neeson particular set of skills that he can literally do anything with until you find out in that scene you're talking about, Ryan. I think that is that 2-minute and 30-second scene when they're screaming, move away, get back. You just... the way it's
he
filmed,
knows martial arts.
he knows martial arts, and it's almost like he rises. He becomes bigger in that moment. I think the camera kind of goes at this angle and way more imposing. His shoulders get more broad, and you're like, "Oh shit, what's he going to do? Oh God, what's he going to do?" You don't know. It's incredible, man. And so that sold me on this film immediately, and I was hooked, man. His dialogue too, God, it was so good, man.
There's something about his appearance too. He's just such a striking looking person. He's such a good looking person.
Good looking guy.
And
yeah, my goodness.
He's just like cool looking. Like, it's weird to say it, but he's like Momoa in that way. Like, he's just like a cool looking guy that you like to watch. So, in those moments he's perfect because you can tell he's physically imposing, but there's a level of like a mystery to him where you're still not really sure what he's capable of. He's very intentional with the words that he uses. It's not like he's a showboating, like, cocky bastard or anything like that. He's just very serious, very to the point, and he can fuck shit up if needed. And so I thought, how could this be Boyega? I'm sorry. Boyega is like 5 foot something, I think, and this guy just kind of brought it. So, but yeah, the first few minutes. I mean, this movie, I think, it just does a great job of telling you everything that you need to know. Here, explaining. So for those of you who don't know what it's about, civil. I'm trying to think of what it explores. It's called like civil asset something. It's this idea, this thing that goes on in America where law enforcement agencies can just seize people's property and basically use it to fund their institution. So without any repercussions.
Yep.
So the idea that this failing, it wasn't a sheriff's office. It was I don't know what word. It wasn't the sheriff's office. The sheriff. I don't think it was. Anyway, regardless, this particular branch of law enforcement was failing, and they, for whatever reason, decided to pull over this man on a bike. Found out that he had money on him, and then they just stole it and took advantage of him, and then had no intention of returning it. And so this guy uncovering this corruption, Saulnier says that this movie is First Blood meets Michael Clayton. It's got a lot of, you were talking about digging like movies like Rambo and things like that. So there's definitely that there for sure. But I think if we're talking about what I did and didn't like, I do think it drags a little bit in the second act. But I'm still always intrigued. But I just don't think we were always like going at 100 miles an hour. But even then, like again, some of the best scenes are just dialogue. It's not like it's an action film. You mentioned Taken. I don't think it's like Taken.
No.
I think there's definitely moments of just seeing a badass take some people out on screen for sure, with corruption and things like that. But it's a pretty mature movie.
It is. Yeah.
I think it's written well. Also, let's shout out Anna Sophia Robb. She does a great job playing a confidant of his that works at the courthouse. I haven't seen her in anything since the way back, which was 10 years ago, with
That's
Steve
forever
Carell.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That's a movie I enjoy quite a bit. Sam Rockwell also. But Anna Sophia Robb plays the girlie in that movie, and I don't know what else she's done, to be honest.
I can't recall anything for years. I know she was big for a span, but for the last 10, I don't know.
Well, Terabithia Heads.
Yeah.
Grew up with her. But let's see, she was in that Dr. Death series that Eric Bana did, that's based on the podcast, that's based on the real world story. Okay. Do you remember the Little Fires Everywhere show?
I do.
Reese Witherspoon and Kerry Washington. She was apparently in that, I guess.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, the last thing I've seen with her in it that I remember, the way back, that was 10 years ago.
Yeah, sure. Her Soul Surfer days were iconic, Ryan. That was.
I remember that movie being a blockbuster, but I don't remember.
It was, yeah.
I have not seen that film.
It's a shark, I think.
But anyway, so at first I didn't recognize her, but yeah, she did a really good job.
Yeah.
Don Johnson crushed it. He's not playing like an over the top villain or anything either. He's just playing smart scum.
Yeah,
and
complete.
It's pretty great to see.
Complete. I mean, everything you would expect from that character, like from the chief, the guy who's pulling the strings, all that stuff. He does exactly that. I mean, he's phenomenal. I will also give a shout out to David Denman.
Yeah.
Roy
from
The Office. I always say it's Roy, but I tell you, man, I've seen this guy twice this year be really good, and multiple times over the last several years. He's a really good actor. And I often see him in projects like this where he's a war guy or he's a police officer, this and that, but he's still really good. I loved his performance, especially his role in the end. That was great. That was really great. Can I tell you my issues with this movie?
Sure.
I love when we get that motivation in the beginning. He's there for his cousin. He's got a mission. That kind of goes by the wayside.
Yeah.
And when that goes by the wayside and we are more focused on Anna Sophia Robb's character, I found myself to be a lot less interested in the second act of this movie. And not because anything major changes. I mean, there's still really good cinematography. I still love our main character, all this stuff. But I loved that emotional pull at the beginning. And it just feels like, I mean, obviously what happens, they shove that to the side, and then it becomes, okay, I'm here to save the town kind of thing. And while what's going on is interesting with what they're doing and taking the money and what his mission becomes, I just felt like it moved a little too slow. And Anna Sophia Robb's inclusion, it's a great performance. I don't know if I was as into it as I needed to be. Now, it does pick back up. The third act is great. I heard some people complain about the lack of action in the third act or in the final moments, and I'm like, that little trick they pulled with us at the main end there, and it's the main end, so I won't say what it is, where it resolves fairly quickly, but it's almost a calm and subtle resolve as opposed to this huge explosion that maybe I was anticipating. I actually love that choice. And I love how they just kept making decisions like that in this movie, to where they're doing things that these types of films don't often do. And a lot of them are the more quiet decisions, which was really cool. So yeah, a lot of things to love about this. And I actually think the more I've thought about it over the last week, I've liked it more. And so I've moved it up my letterbox list. But yeah, I do wish they wouldn't have moved away from that mission he was on at the beginning as quick as they did, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. But at the same time, it's like this movie has a point to it, you know? Like, again, the civil asset forfeiture, just exploring that idea. It definitely has ideas and a lot on its mind. So I appreciate exploring that a little bit more. I love that it kind of makes you more sick to your stomach, honestly, when there's a scene outside the hospital shortly after Aaron Pierre's character meets Don Johnson and they're talking outside and he finds out something. And then Don Johnson's character is very just like, let's move on from this because it could go one way or it could go the other. And it's just like, first, it just kind of made me hate everybody else more. And at the same time, I'm just kind of wondering, like, these people are just evil. It's like, just like all for the sake of, and like, I get it. He's a cop. He's a proud cop. He's trying to save. But this idea of just being able to take people's money, not having more respect for a veteran. I mean, all these things, you start stacking the deck and just like, it's almost just like they just want to mess with them. Like they're just trying to mess with them.
Just assholes. That's all they are.
And so, and then I think that they do that to Anna Sophia Robb's character as well. I mean, she is victimized a few times as well. And it kind of just, it was kind of hurt. It was making me feel things. It was hurting my stomach. And so I agree ultimately. And I do think it drags in parts. And probably wanted to see more with the brother for sure. But at the end of the day, I think this is top 10 material. Like, just I welcome anything Saulnier does. And again, I'm so taken by Aaron Pierre's presence in this movie. And I just found it wildly effective. Compared to the movie that we reviewed the week before this, Blink Twice. That's another movie that I think has a lot on its mind. And I don't know. I think this is more successful. And wasn't as flashy either. You know. Anyway, I think this is very effective. And it's so weird to say, but I would kind of like to see a sequel. It doesn't need a sequel. No, it does not. It shouldn't have a sequel. If they said there was another one, I'd be all about it.
Oh, dude, I would too. I mean, while you're watching, it feels like you're watching one of those iconic characters being birthed. You know, it's like the first time you watch, I mean, hell, another Taken reference. They botched those sequels, but it's like that stayed in pop culture for so long. And where everybody's getting to watch this on Netflix, and especially that scene, that 2-minute and 30-second scene I was talking about, I'm seeing it make its rounds on Twitter. I'm seeing people talk about, oh man, this guy's a badass. This feels like the beginning. And I feel like Netflix is going to see the views and they're going to say, hey, Saulnier, you got another Hold the Dark in you? No, you got another Rebel Ridge in you? And I will he do it? I don't know. But ultimately, you see the joy that they all had for this film and the fact that it's making numbers. I wouldn't be shocked, man. Would not be shocked. And I'd be happy.
Rebel Ridge 2 should be about Mr. Liu has to go back to Korea. And he asks Aaron Pierre's character to act as his bodyguard. Because once he goes back home, he's got to deal with like some Korean gangsters and shit.
Oh, my goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, Never let Ryan Snelling in the writing room. Let's keep him out of the writing room.
How sick would that be?
No, that's great.
If
that's
they,
great.
yeah, I mean, I would eat it up. Like, yeah,
I will say,
like,
if there's one
Go
thing I've needed just a little, I didn't need it, wasn't necessary. I could have used more of the badassery in terms of the actual fighting, in terms of his skill set on display. I don't know where it would have happened. Narratively, it doesn't make sense, but maybe a sequel, we get a little more of that. If we get a sequel.
Yeah, I think in a good way. It's good that we want more. I thought it was pretty perfect because, you know, it was the end, the big climax outside of the police station. I mean, it was one of those things where I was just like constantly like, oh, no. And it, like, cause he'd go up against somebody with a weapon, without a weapon.
Yeah.
So it was just this constant like tension and release every time he went up against somebody. And that was another thing too, is that like there would be scenes and the action would be him just like disarming somebody or breaking down a gun. Like that's all it would be. And it would be sick.
That's so cool, dude.
Yeah. It's like it wasn't so much about like choreography and having an actual fight. Like he'd get somebody in a hold and disassemble their gun. And then that was it. And it's just, again, that tension and release over and over again.
You know what I think the coolest scene in The Dark Knight is? It's the scene when he, as Bruce Wayne, is walking into that little room where those two guys are putting their clothes on, and he's disassembling that gun as he's walking, and he's just throwing the pieces down to the ground. Dude, that's one of my favorite moments in that movie. I love when those types of subtle things are so... I mean, that makes a character way more badass to me than just seeing a bunch of generic action scenes. And that happens so much in this film. So I love that, man. I think that is a brilliant way to create an imposing force that, again, leaves you wanting more, but in an effective way. And so Saulnier, man, he's really good. Really good director. I want to see so much more.
I love that you brought that up with The Dark Knight, though, because I agree that scene is better than the action scene in Hong Kong when he gets Mr. Lau. I think that scene sucks.
Really,
honestly. When he breaks into the building and takes out all the Chinese guys in that building, I think the action is terrible. It's
clunky.
I don't like that. I don't like the martial art that they chose for that trilogy. I'm not going to lie. I just think it's wildly ineffective and not great for the movies, for the pictures. So I just don't think it's interesting or fun to watch in any way. It's clunky, and I just think it kind of sucks, honestly. But
it's clunky. I love it because those movies, I love them. But if I had to critique them, which I hate doing because I love them so much, I will admittedly say, like, I watched The Batman. The action in The Batman is way better than the action in that entire trilogy, and it makes me sad because everything else is just so damn good.
Yeah, the movie's incredible. It's one of the greatest movies of all time. That scene sucks.
Yeah, it's clunky for sure.
Batfleck's Batman would beat the absolute living piss out of Christian Bale's Batman.
But would he beat Aaron Pierre's character in Rebel Ridge?
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
Yes, he would.
You're right. All right. Well.
Anyway, do we like Blink Twice more than everybody else? Like, where are you at with Blink Twice?
Buddy, that's what it feels like. I got some people I got some people just going off on me like, what is wrong with you? This movie is atrocious. And wasn't that the one where people got up and left? Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What? Are we just wrong? Because I like that movie a lot. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really get it.
I don't either.
I don't get the issues with it. I think I need to watch it again.
Sure.
And I'm curious to see how I receive the ending now that I have the full context of the movie. And I don't know though. It's like I watched the movie, thought it looked good, was always curious about what was happening, had a couple of issues here and there, was really taken aback by the great performances.
Yeah.
And Zoe, I mean, I don't know. I just like I don't understand why people are kind of hard on it and hate on it.
I got the word woke a lot. But, you know, I also got the word woke with Rebel Ridge in my comment section. I'm like, guys, what movie are you? Did you even watch the same movie as me?
I actually think it's great that they didn't touch on any of it. Like, is the imagery very much black man being harassed
100%.
by the police? For sure.
But it's
so
subtle.
if Saulnier, if he wanted to make that point, he did all he needed to do.
Yeah.
But without just hammering it home and making it obvious and on the nose. Like the imagery enough is fine and effective. But also, we could have gone this entire podcast without mentioning that, and it would have been fine too. Like it goes back to this idea where, like, I mentioned this on the Fandom Pod. There are gonna be roles where people of color just need to be able to play them without us having to go and like, yes, because I live in modern America, of course it crossed my mind seeing this taking place. But at the same time, the movie's like, no, we're going to show you some cool action. We're going to show you this cool guy. We're going to talk about I keep forgetting the term. Civil asset forfeiture. It's got more on its mind than that. And so anyway, it's like, yeah, you can do that, but we just got to get to the point where we can just watch a movie without, like, there can just be a movie about a black man who is harassed by cops too.
Yeah.
So if the movie, you know, in the Batman, you know, I think the one thing that gets people when it comes to criticizing the Batman is the line by Catwoman who says rich white folks or whatever she says. If that movie could have just taken that line out and still accomplished everything that it was doing, right?
100%.
So this movie, so people complain about that one bit of dialogue, right? This movie, to my knowledge, to my recollection, never had a moment like that.
Nope.
And then, but the people are still doing it. It's like, we've got to let things like this happen. We've got to get to a point where movies like this exist. If there was a line like that and you wanted to do that, fine. I still would have said, this is exactly the same great movie, no matter what. But I would see more if it was on the nose and if people wanted to credit. But I'm not gonna bite. So
no,
they can think that I'm gonna push up against it.
I agree.
What else?
That's when's the sequel coming?
Whenever Mr. Liu goes back to Korea.
So we got the plot.
Wasn't that the thing? Or no, I'm sorry. I can't remember. Was it he was Chinese but fought in the Korean War? Is that what it was?
That's maybe. I can't remember either, to be honest with you.
I think that was the case. He's Chinese but fought in Korea, and they made the thing like, oh, he was on the other side. So not back to Korea, back to China. I can't remember exactly, but regardless, wherever he's from, that's where they go. That's the sequel.
I was telling you before this started. I've watched. It's been 4 days, and I feel like I've watched a decade worth of movies over these because I've watched 2 movies, 4 episodes of The Penguin. I've watched so many things, and I'm like, what happened in Rebel Ridge? But it's still sticking with me, so that's good.
No, we're not talking about The Penguin yet, guys.
Not today. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, that was fun. Good times. You know what's funny? We didn't even talk about Destin Daniel Cretton. Destin Cretton.
Oh,
Destin Daniel Cretton getting Spider-Man 4.
Yeah. What do you What are you thinking about that one, Ryan?
It's not an inspired choice, but
Nope.
I get it. There's not really, there's no way I can get excited about it other than the fact it's like, great, you've got somebody that can participate in the Marvel engine.
Mm-hmm.
And you have somebody that I guess is maybe more in tune with the MCU side of things. Because Sony could have just been like, no, let's get anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But they got somebody who's already done one of these things, more in tune with the overall universe, things like that. So, is he a director that has a signature style? No, can't really pinpoint what this guy is fully capable of. Big fan of Short Term 12.
Oh, yeah.
Shang-Chi's fine. Shang-Chi's fine. Third act looks like shit. You know, it's just, I don't really know how to get excited about the director of Spider-Man 4, to be honest. And I think that was going to be the case. It could have been anybody else. I don't know.
I was hoping for our game night guys, our Dungeons and Dragons guys that were rumored. I thought they could have brought kind of what they did for Dungeons and Dragons. I did not think that movie would be good. It ended up being a blast. I was bummed when I saw Creighton, but at the same time, I'm like, I mean, I like Shang-Chi. I think it's good. It's not one I revisit often, but I think of that scaffolding fight, and I'm
So
like,
good.
If they could bring that type of energy to the action sequences in Spider-Man 4, just that style, if you will, because that was awesome. And I'm like, if they could do that and have a good story and maybe make it pop a little bit more than John Watts, because that's, yeah, it's a very film critic thing to say, but that's my knock on these Spider-Man movies. I'm like, John Watts just doesn't have anything of note here.
Yeah.
And so I'm lacking that, other than what we talked about, that shot of J. Jonah Jameson with the billboard, right? It's phenomenal. Yeah. And so if we could have more of that with Spider-Man, maybe make it a little bit more grounded, that would be great. But, you know, it feels like they're going to do multiverse stuff. And it's crazy because I love No Way Home, but I'm not super pumped for this right now.
And I take all this with a grain of salt. It kind of doesn't mean anything anymore, but somebody on Twitter was like, it's being reported that it's actually going to be street level, but with multiversal elements. And I'm just like, okay, whatever.
Who cares?
Let's just wait.
Wait.
I mean, I don't know how. Am I overall excited to see Spider-Man 4? Absolutely. Can't wait. Do I have concerns about it being released in between both Avengers movie? Yes.
Yeah.
That's weird. But anyway.
When they said, are you familiar with Battle World? Are you familiar with that? Or am I just speaking crazy? Well, yeah. The initial rumor was that because it's between those two movies, it would take place on Battle World. And I just think that's that's not what we want. That's not what we need to ground it more.
I don't want to see Battle World really at all, to be honest.
Okay.
In any movie. I think it's a pretty boring concept. If we wanted to do a Battle World sequence, cool. Totally cool. Or if it's the finale of one of the movies, you know.
That's what I think it'll be.
That's fine.
Yep.
If it's similar to the Wakanda fight, or if it's similar to even the in-game climax, you know, if we do Battle World that way, I'm all good with it. But like seeing an entire movie set on Battle World, it's like, I'm not interested in that, to be honest. So, but we'll see. It's kind of, I don't know how to talk about MCU anymore. I really don't. So to just speculate, and I don't know what we're doing. And we've kind of discussed that ad nauseum. So I don't really know how to comment on this any further. But anyway, it could have been anybody else. Doesn't change my excitement level. If anything, did you also see the report that it's like they're going to explore this Doctor Strange spell more, and it's already going to be like negated and
Oh.
yeah, they've already started. I mean, I don't know if it's true, but they've already started talking about like, yeah, the end of No Way Home doesn't matter. We're gonna have MJ, and, like which I've been fearing that since the release of No Way Home. So I guess it's not really a shock.
No, it's not shocking, but it's sad because I think they set themselves up for something really cool there. They could have moved on to another love interest for a movie or two. They could have done all kinds of things. And he's not going to be Tony Stark Jr. now, but he may still be it may still be another multiversal portal, Doctor Strange type thing. And I think we'll see Andrew Garfield and Toby again. I really do.
I hope we see them in the Avengers movies 100%.
We'll see him there too. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I think if we see another Spider-Man in Spider-Man 4, I would want it to be Miles. So,
oh yeah, didn't think about that.
Yeah, let's do Miles for Spider-Man 4.
Cool.
And do Andrew and Toby for Avengers.
I love that.
Cool. All right, man. That's it. What a neat little pod we've got here.
That was nice. I mean, other than my probably embarrassing rant at the beginning, it was great. So apologies. I was venting. I can vent to you all, right?
Look, we can do that. This is our show.
Okay.
Yeah. This is our show. We can have those moments and we can be real. We can be human.
Yeah.
And we want our audience to give us the courtesy that we should give them.
That's right.
Respecting their thoughts and opinions,
Yeah. I can say what I want on here.
I can.
We expressed our dog's anal glands earlier. That was awesome. It was they needed expressed and we did it. Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
You lost me.
Let's limit ourselves just a little bit. It's a very normal thing to do as a pet owner, but maybe saying that on a podcast is not the best idea.
Well, that's all right.
Is that all you got?
It'll keep people pondering until next week.
Yeah.
So you saw Speak No Evil. I might see Speak No Evil.
Okay.
And so we could be back in the next couple of days with another pod. Ooh. We will also be gearing up for Penguin. Agatha All Along. Is it about time we rank the MCU as well?
Yes, absolutely. We can do that soon.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Guys, we love you. We appreciate you. Go read a book.
Yeah.
Watch Kill Tony.
Yeah.
We'll meet back here. I want to do more community-based stuff like that in the future. So again, if it's something silly, like a little movie mode book club, even though it makes, or just like off air, we've talked about having sort of like a hang podcast called Rec Room. So I don't know, all this kind of stuff, but we need to get to 1,000 subscribers.
Yep.
So please tell your friends. And if you've been thinking about subscribing for a while, please do. If you're a podcast listener but don't normally watch on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel anyway. Mm-hmm. You never know when you're going to turn off a presidential debate and need a movie podcast like ours. Guys, we love you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Check on your dogs.